The Leafs are rebuilding. The Leafs are in an era of change. And generally speaking, if you're a guy who's been around the Leafs as long as Tyler Bozak, that's not a good thing. Because change means a lack of you. Especially when the Leafs traded away your main line mate and buddy, Phil Kessel, over the summer. But I tell you what, Leaf fans, you listen to me and you listen good. If you cheer for the blue and white. If you are a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, for as long as Tyler Bozak is a Toronto Maple Leaf, you are a Tyler Bozak fan. And I know this contradicts some things I've said in the past, so I'll tell you why I think this way now. Look, if you've always been a Tyler Bozak fan, you love seeing him out there, you love when he was flowsy, and you love when he scores and that double fist pump thing he does for a goal celebration, that's great. After all, he is a pretty nice story. College signee, ends up going to be a first-line center on a National Hockey League team, and a pretty storied one at that. But then there are those, and you could lump me into that group at sometimes, that could not wait for his downfall. Just did not want him to be the Leafs' #1 center anymore. And for the last half-decade or so, being the Leafs' #1 center meant playing with Phil Kessel. People were dying for the two to be split apart. And now Bozak's still here while Kessel's on the Penguins. That's not quite what we had in mind. And I think people's main beef with Bozak was just he shouldn't be the #1 center. Like, unless Tyler Bozak did something to you personally, he stole your lunch money, he shoved you into a puddle, he said something reckless like Meek Mill is better than Drake, unless he did one of those things, you shouldn't be mad at him. The problem is something like this that I read in a Steve Birch article on sportsnet.ca, which I will link to at the bottom. Across Bozak's entire career, 85.5% of his 5-on-5 and power play ice time has come alongside Kessel. 65.5% of his points have come on goals directly involving Kessel, and more than 90% of his points have been produced with Kessel on the ice. Now this is the bad one. In his 878 minutes and 8 seconds of 5-on-5 ice time away from Kessel in his career, Bozak has only managed to produce 3 goals and 11 assists. That translates to an 0.96 points per hour rate, which is smack in the middle of fourth-liner territory. Again, that link is below. You can read it. It's a really chipper article. It's not. So, if all signs point to Tyler Bozak not being as good of a player without Phil Kessel, why should you cheer for him? Because after a Leaf season that was utterly abysmal, you could get one or both of the following two situations. 1, Bozak has some crazy bounce back and redemption story, and he gets over 50 points, 60 points, maybe even 70 points, becomes like a 25-30 goal scorer, and holy smokes, he's a mainstay staple of a rebuilding Toronto Maple Leafs team. He just makes Mike Babcock look like a genius. Or it turns out Bozak is not part of the Leafs' plans, but he plays really well, and in doing so, the Leafs can trade him for more. It was reported that the Leafs actually got an offer for Bozak from the Arizona Coyotes last season, and they obviously rejected it. Which means the trade proposal was probably something along the lines of, we'll take Bozak for this ball of lint. Or who knows, maybe they even wanted the Leafs to retain salary, which no thank you. And if you're sitting there like, oh, right, what are the Leafs gonna possibly get for Bozak? Is it really so ridiculous to think the Leafs could get something adequate in return for Tyler Bozak when the Coyotes got a prospect and a first-round pick for Antoine Vermette, who at the time of the trade had 35 points? The Leafs have Bozak for $4.2 million against the cap for the next 3 seasons. And the Leafs project to not be very good for at least 2 of those seasons. And in not being very good, they probably won't end up playing that close to the cap. The Leafs aren't in some desperate need to get rid of him, so why not hold on to Bozak and see if he can do it himself? And if he can, you either have a rejuvenated player or a really good draft pick or a prospect or something, because you rebuild hockey teams with draft picks and not magic beans. And at the end of the day, whether you're upset about Bozak being the #1 center or whatever, he's been nothing but a good soldier. He came to the Leafs as a free agent college signing. He only spent like half a season in the minors before the Leafs called him up and were like, do you want to be our #1 center? And he goes, yes. Is that even a question? I think I'm being punked. And he goes up and he plays with a line of Kessel and Nikolai Kulemin, and they actually ended the season pretty well. And in the years, the half a decade that followed, the Leafs never got someone better. Now, this is the part where you go, Steve, Nazem Kadri, and I go, yes, I certainly agree with you to some extent, but at the end of the day, Tyler Bozak's a hockey player. When the coach calls his name, the myriad of coaches that he's had as a Toronto Maple Leaf, he goes over the bench, because that's his job. His job is not to go, I don't know, coach, have you seen our possession numbers? Coach, I was playing NHL last night, and I put our line together, and the chemistry was not good. Why don't you try another line? Because the video game said. The Toronto Maple Leafs failed Tyler Bozak, not the other way around. Of course, that's just my opinion. What do you think? Down below, I got some Leafs links for you to check out. Optimus Rhyme has a new mask. You can check it out, link below. Some interesting words from Nazem Kadri, who wants to prove his worth, may end up being the Leafs' #1 center, replacing Tyler Bozak. His words down below. Chris Johnson is working on this crazy story about the Leafs are actually putting some sort of GPS thing in the Toronto Marlies jerseys. I have no idea. I haven't read it yet, but I'm about to, and hopefully so are you. And last but not least, today is Kraft Hockeyville. The Vancouver Canucks host the San Jose Sharks at 10:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern on Sportsnet 1. Hey, you know what's great? Watching hockey games. I miss it. And